And I had self-worth issues as just as a human being. Who was Bradley, the person, or what have I got to offer this world? And that really affected me when I retired, because all I'd ever had was this confidence that you're Sir Bradley Wiggins, you're a legend and you're a hero to most. And I get told that every day. But take that away, and who am I, the person? What have I got to offer anyone, you know?
Sir Bradley.
Lance.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
But before we get into it, I just, and I said this on the show today, and I meant what I said. It was such a special week for, I think, for all of us that were sitting around and sort of performing. As you've figured out, that's what we do on the move. And while we talk about a serious bike race, we kind of like to have fun. And it was very special. For me and I think for everyone, and I meant what I said. I mean, I had just followed you, and we raced to Scotia, but never hung out, never chatted. Hung out a little bit a couple of years ago in Mallorca, but I had tracked you just watching Eurosport and things like that. And I also, and we can get into this, you know, I heard or I had heard, you know, what those folks, you know, he's unreliable, we get pinned on him, which I think is, you know, is part of your magic. It's part of your art.
Yeah.
But when I saw, I was like, man, this guy, and I said it today, this guy's the best in the business. And so I'm so glad all that to say.
Yeah.
I'm so glad this worked out. I hope you had a fucking great week.
Yeah. No, it's been the best week of my life, Lance, honestly. And I can't thank you all enough for having me out here. But, you know, to add to that, you know, I have had since I retired in 2016, I have had picked up even more of a reputation of being quite unreliable and uncontactable. And I think, you know, where I'm at now, I'm probably in a more open state to say there are reasons for that that were amplified. And you can imagine, like with a few other people we know, like Jan and that, you know, there was dark times, you know, and things that contribute in those situations to that. But being who I am, I'm quite introvert and I'm quite the performer.
Yeah.
So I disguise it well. Yeah. You know, and when I'm unhappy, I disguise it well by being very eccentric and outgoing and funny and more manic in that extent. But you know, you and Johan have been really lifesavers for me in many ways, and one of the few that have looked out for me, as well as my own kids, my son Ben and that. But I'm on the right track now, and you know, it's given me a new perspective on life, actually, because one of the problems I have is I isolate myself from life and people, and it's quite nice to have been back out here for an extended period of time.
This is a good life.
This is great. Tell you what, it beats the English life.
I tell people, you know, you know, so many people ask us to do the move in Europe, or go, you know, city to city as the race, follow the race basically. And I said, guys, you don't understand. Like, we sit around in this room that we're sitting in now. Yeah. I mean, you could be in your underwear, as George is. I mean, you could be in your sweatpants. Yeah. You could be whatever. And we watch the race. We don't leave. We do a show. And then we have the afternoon in this beautiful valley that I think is one of the most beautiful places in the world, certainly in the summer, whether you're riding your bike or playing golf or working. And we never leave. Yeah. And so the answer is always no. No, I think we have it figured out. And so I'm glad you enjoyed that.
No, it's been fantastic. I love it. I don't want to go home.
You assimilated well.
Yeah. No, I did. And I fitted into the Aspen life, I think. I'm treated as a local now.
So here's just, let me give you a little history of this really small mountain town. And I do believe it's the reason that I loved it so much, and I do believe it's the reason that I think the town loved me back. This is a very old town, right? Going all the way back to the silver miners and gold miners and prospectors and all the people that came here through the winters and just tried to make a life, and a lot of them did. And then as you sort of get into the 50s and the 60s and 70s and even the 80s, this town harbored and protected and worshipped outlaws.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody that's been here for 50 years will tell you that, whether, obviously Hunter S. Thompson was the king, outlaw, but, so many musicians through the years, the Eagles, Stevie Nicks, John Denver, so many folks, outlaws were revered.
Yeah.
Right. And so that is in, and as the story has been told to me, I've spent a lot of time with folks who were best friends with Hunter.
Yeah.
And Hunter was crazy, right? But Hunter was also brilliant. But this little community revered Hunter and protected Hunter. And so it's in our DNA here. And you're an outlaw.
Yeah. True story.
It is a true story. Yeah. And just to see you walk through town, and I know I had fun. It's fun. It's fun to watch. Yeah. I know sometimes the wardrobe choices were interesting, but I said to myself, no way, man. I said, these motherfuckers, look at them. I was just watching, and I said, see that they are attracted to him and drawn to him because he's in the DNA of this little mountain town, and the DNA is outlaw.
Right. That's very interesting.
Yeah. And it's now it's changing as cool, hip, popular places do, but at the core, you still have sort of this outlaw culture. So I think it's one of the reasons you loved it so much.
I never knew that.
Well, now you do.
Outlaw town.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure there are other outlaws, but but we're blessed to be here. But just having you, and I said it also on the show today, when I was a little nervous, we got the tickets. It was like step one. We had a little snafu on the way over, the visa, whatnot. And I was like, okay, this isn't good. All right, made the plane. I said to Johan, are you sure he's over water? Because if he's over water, we got him. And then we confirmed. Anyways, you get here, and we had a great week. Now, this is on the heels of, probably most of the cycling community and a lot of the British community reading these stories. And before I say this, and before people listen, if they don't know the story, these stories are not uncommon for athletes. They're not uncommon for champions. In fact, they're all too common. Yeah. Right. So I read the story. I don't remember, maybe it was in the Daily Mail or one of them, from, filing for bankruptcy, couch surfing. Yeah.
No, that's where the sensationalism came in.
Yes.
And that's where this story ran amok. And it continued for several weeks. Right. For a story of bankruptcy, I was made bankrupt through a company. When I retired, I had three companies. My image rights company that handled all my image rights, endorsement deals, various other things. Connected to that, I joined XIX Entertainment, Simon Fuller, in 2014. And they set up various joint ventures with various clothing companies, drink suppliers, all different things, whatever endorsements come my way.
Right.
Yeah. That's and then on the bottom of that, so these companies were all subsidiaries of the top company, which was my image rights company. Now that was done, as we see now through the lawyers, that was done purposefully. So the top company would always take the hit if there was any trouble on the other ones. They should have been separate companies. And off the bottom of that, the third company was a cycling team. It was called New Cycling Limited, which was Team Wiggins, which was a team that was set up to facilitate the national track program, which was a team pursuit, which was my last cycling career goal in Rio. That team should never have made a loss. It should never have made a profit. It was purely to pay the riders of the team their wages and handle the budget. But that team, which was being managed by XIX Entertainment and run on a daily basis along with Andrew McQuaid, who was the manager of that team, all the salaries came out of. I was made a director of that team when it was set up, but I had no involvement in the team. It was just there. I was still racing.
You were the namesake.
Yeah. And it was Team Wiggins.
And the team would spend what they brought in and vice versa.
The budget of the team was $650,000.
Right.
And in year one, for 6 riders, it spent $1 million. So I had to prop that team up with my own money from Wiggins' rights. So there was a lot of money coming down from the top company to prop all these ventures up that weren't making any money. Off of that, your management were taking slices of their expenditure, people they were putting in employment. So it was a complete mess. And because they were all subsidiaries of the one company, the top company took the biggest hit. So it ran up a debt of nearly $1.5 million, which got given to me as a director's loan, but I wasn't a director at the time, and I had to be made a director to take the loan without my knowledge. I was still racing my bike at the time. So it's a complete mess, and I wasn't aware of this mess until I was deep into retirement. Because one of the things I regret probably is I never paid attention to my financial affairs when I was racing. We spoke a bit about it on the pod earlier. Did I get any money for running the Giro?
Right.
And I didn't, because it was something that I probably assumed was going to be there forever, money. And I was always going to have a value where people would want to pay me money. So I never really did the sport for the money. But I realize now the importance of I should have paid more attention to it. Because you get to the point then where I'm in this situation now, but because of the mess that's been created, and because it's been rumbling on for quite a few years now, this hasn't just happened overnight. It's now in the hands of receivers now, and they're going to get to go through everything. One thing which we've not been able to do with lawyers over the last couple of years is get all the tax files, all my accountant's files and records, and go through it and see, because I was getting ripped off left, right and centre by the people looking after me as well,
right.
Accountants as well.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that happens to athletes. You're making a lot of money, and if you haven't got your eyes on it, people take it. It goes back to the same old thing. Mike Tyson, someone was charging him to wash his towels.
Right.
And this will all come out in the washover due process over the next few years. It's going to be a hell of a headache to get right. But the thing that I think is the hardest to deal with is the tabloid newspapers in the UK, because they were aware of it before it even went on the insolvency register, which shows that there must have been someone inside that leaked it to the press. And once it's in the press, what ensued for the next couple of weeks was a paparazzi style harassment of every member of my family, and trying to dig up dirt and stories and things like this just to add weight to the fact that they think you're done and dusted. And one of the greatest things has been coming out here and showing the great time I'm having. And my personality hasn't changed, and it's not going to bring me down, and I will come out of this, aside from that, tabloid newspapers throwing large amounts of money at me when they think you're on your arse to sell your story, which, again, I refuse to dance with the devil on this occasion.
Yep.
So it will be all right, but that's the first time I've commented on it since that all happened.
It's also, I view, and I always have, and I still do to this day, despite it all, I like to take a very clean line when it comes to finances. And just the thought of parent companies, shell companies, it's almost like whack-a-mole, and sort of, or that, where you're moving like the magician moving the cups around. That's scary. Yeah. Right. Cause especially if it's scary if you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And again, athletes, they're busy.
Yeah.
Right. They're supposed to be being professional athletes, training, racing, competing. And then, you're supposed to have trust, right, with folks around you. But if all of a sudden you open your eyes, you wake up, or you turn the corner and you said, oh no, this isn't the way it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And you're left holding the bag.
Yeah. But one of the other major things in that is when I left Sky, because I was a British resident, I never lived abroad, the tax laws changed. And when I started with Team Sky, as most cyclists are, I was self-employed.
Yep.
With an image rights company. Towards the end of my tenure with Team Sky, they were involved in a 2-year case with HMRC for everyone who worked at Sky to fight whether they were deemed employed by Sky. So I was acting as a witness for Sky in that case against HMRC, spent an enormous amount of money on legal fees, because in supporting that, because if I was deemed employed, I'd have had to back pay taxes and national insurance, etc. And in the end, they accepted it. I was deemed employed. So I had to go back 5 years and pay all taxes and every bits and bobs and pieces. And Sky knew that was happening from the day I signed with them. So I was a bit of a scapegoat in many ways. So that had huge ramifications. It is what it is.
And how severe is it at this point? Because, if just in having followed stories and examples of American athletes, I mean, debt is debt.
Yeah.
And you owe somebody the debt.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And whether it's here in the US, whether it's the IRS, or whether it's a bank or whoever, right? So you're going to owe. And if it gets to a certain point, you can't you can go work, but you're going to work and get paid and hand it to them. So I don't know how far along we're talking. For example, I can imagine, and I certainly hope. I mean, you should be giving at least one speech a month.
Yeah,
right? With the way with your charisma, right? But that is the stuff that, you know, if we're just friends talking here, which we are, you can do that forever.
Yeah.
You can do that forever. You're not gonna. I mean, we're 44 and 52-year-old athletes. You don't endorse stuff anymore.
No, exactly.
Right? Nobody's paying you to ride your bike wearing a pair of shoes. That's done.
Yeah.
But you've had this complicated, fascinating, intriguing life that people will pay to hear. So I'm no couch surfing.
No.
That was in the article, just for the listeners. But I didn't make that up. That said it. It said, and there were people quoted in the article that said
it's all horseshit.
I understand. I understand. But I haven't asked you.
No, I know. But it's but that's one thing. There was a thing. Apparently, I borrowed a camper van last year, and it went back trashed. I mean, some of the stuff that comes out, and it's been a constant thing really since I won the Tour de France. But I've learned to live with that. But one thing I won't do is sit down with them and take an extortionate amount of money to give them an interview. And it's just it's interesting. I've kind of grown thicker skin over the last few years, as we probably both have.
Right. And I think. For me, it was, and even now, I mean, we all go through little mini crises, and, my first objective in any crisis is just, how do we just quiet this whole thing down, not make it go away, but just, because I believe that the best decisions are made in stillness, and the best decisions are made with patience. And I mean, you read that article and it's not quiet, right? And if that's life, that's not quiet.
No.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
But how do you just get things to this, even if it's the most basic, simple, calm place, I mean, there are days I think, I mean, it's funny. You mentioned that you just assumed that you being you, the income would always be fine.
Exactly.
I grew up in a way, and I still to this day, there is a part of me that every day I believe that I'm going to lose everything. Yeah. And have
you always thought that?
I've always thought that.
That's been a thing in the back of your head.
I've always thought that. And
where does that come from?
Well, I didn't come from much.
No.
So maybe but I also, and it sounds dark and fatalistic, but it's also kind of healthy. Yeah. Right? Just, I try to be as conservative as I can. Just to ensure that, even on a cloudy or a rainy day, hey, if we got to get calm real quick and we got to get simple real quick, we can manage our way out of this. I mean, I did it, right? I lost $111 million in 5 years when it all fell out. And you and I are sitting here today. It's funny, I did see some articles about you being here and to the point of the British tabloids. And I can read anything. I don't care what they say.
I haven't read a thing.
But I read just in researching for this conversation. I had to. I just Googled it, and you start reading a little, and you're like, oh, he's over there with that disgraced Lance Armstrong, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I got it. All right, you fucking people use the same word they've used. That's like autofill.
Yeah, I know.
And I'm like, if you'd have come over here for 8 days and walked in our shoes, or walked, hand in hand with us, arm in arm, I mean, it's amazing. But anyways, back to the point. So calming everything down, understanding all of the stuff that's out there, and navigating your way through it.
True.
Because, and here's the I just want to put a point on it. I know that it sucked. I mean, that article couldn't have been nice to hear about, or even if you read it, it wasn't good. The day you're in trouble is the day they don't write about you. Yeah. Don't forget that. They've written about me forever. Yeah. Good things, bad things, mostly bad things. The day they don't talk about you and they don't write about you, you're fucked. So, having said that, I mean, it's still intriguing and it's still interesting to the British public and even to the international public. I mean, we've seen it just by you being here. People lost their minds. So you got to find a way out of that.
Yeah. And I will.
Yeah.
I'm in a better place to now, funnily enough, than I was before it happened. It's been the last thing that's been hanging over my head for a couple of years now, that once it was out, it was like a switch on. Because one thing I struggle with is when I can't control something. So the minute it came and the hearing happened, and it was deemed that, aside from the press and everything else, that's the moment you can move forward then and start getting to that point, as you just said. When your hands are tied and you're under lock and key and this thing's looming and there's court dates and things like that, you can't move on in your life. You can't do anything. We'll see what happens at this stage. But it's not been the hardest thing I've been through. There have been lots of other hard things I've been through, but it's been a challenging thing nonetheless. Yeah.
Here's what I wish for you. I wish, just knowing you how I do, learning about you how I have learned. You're 44 years old. This is what's happened in 44 years. Okay. You never had a father.
No.
You were sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
You shot to stardom and fame pretty quickly. Not all of these are negative or unfortunate. You have children. You have a marriage. You've been knighted. You have this situation. But if you just, and I want to talk about your father too, but if I take these three things, so growing up fatherless, but also it almost, and you can tell me better, but almost teased. My sense was there was, I too grew up fatherless.
Yeah.
I never had that connection or reconnection, but as I read it, that was sort of there. I know you went to see your father when you were in your teens.
Yeah.
That wasn't what you had imagined.
No.
That makes it, to me, that makes it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
Right. It's not
No.
ideal being fatherless.
No.
But it's a lot worse to say, okay, maybe here it is. This is it. This is the connection, the relationship that whether I've ever admitted this or not, this is what I have always wanted. And you go there and you're disappointed and you leave and it's crushing, right? So this, the sexual assault by the old coach, and then even now up until 44 years old, you lived a complicated life.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of life and a lot of hard life to live in 44 years, man. And there's been other things, right? And stuff that you've probably harbored or thought about or weighed on you, controversies, except it doesn't matter, those things. But, I am curious because I know I've had my own personal journey after many, many years of just believing that I can will myself out of this. I'm tough. I can fucking hammer through this. Bring it. Right? We can't. And it took me a long time to just say, all right, I need help.
Yeah.
And when I look at your life, it's far worse. And so I am curious, and you don't have to, you can share as little or nothing of this, but any work there, any therapy, intensive therapy. And if not, as your friend, which we can talk offline, I would be your cheerleader in that. And I don't care who you are, how tough you cannot will yourself out. These things, those even up to right now, these are all traumas. Yeah. Right? Our life is full of trauma. And by the way, your trauma started before you were born because your mom and your dad were probably not seeing eye to eye, and she was, very unhappy. And so I'm again, I don't want to pry, but I am curious if there's been work done.
Not really.
Not really. No. We should talk.
Yeah. I think, no, there hasn't really, but I'm kind of very self-aware that I'm not making up a justification as to why I haven't, but I knew what my main priorities were. And it's a shameful thing, but I think in doing that, I think that's when all the other stuff comes. That's why I finally admitted that, what happened to me from a sexual abuse point of view as a child. My son was racing. He got to 13 and it was like looking in the mirror, and I realized the abnormality, and I realized I'd buried that. The buried grief that when my dad got murdered in 2008, and sort of never went to the funeral. It was Olympic year in Beijing. That re-sparked all the kind of, as you're just saying, the kind of, should I have ever made contact with him again and gone and met him? Because he was a professional cyclist,
Right,
he was,
right.
He rode for,
So you rode 6 days.
Rode 6 days, rode in the road. He rode Tour of Flanders, Paris-Roubaix, all those things. He rode for Mark Ziebson, with Patrick Circuit, in race with Eddie Merckx and everyone. But he was European marathon champion with Tony Doyle. And he was a big 6-day rider. And he was my hero, and he still is to this day, because I grew up knowing about him. My mum constantly told me and informed me about him in a cycling sense, because he left home when I was 1 year of age. Never saw him again until I was 7. I spoke to him when I was 17, and saw him again when I was 19. But it was a constant narrative, and I had a stepfather who was quite violent towards me, as most kids' dads were in the 80s and 90s. That's the way I justify it. And I had a stepbrother who was 8 years younger than me, so I was the scapegoat in this constant narrative of my dad being a running theme in the house. That your dad was a great cyclist. One day you could be like him. I saw photos, videos. It was, they were there, still on YouTube to this day. So I grew up, and I think it wasn't a love of cycling. It was more, there was a father out there, an absent father, that I had this connection that I could maybe emulate him in some way if he was still there, meet him one day and make him proud as to why he abandoned me. And that's why I started on the track, because my dad was a track cyclist. He got in contact when I became junior world champion.
Right.
He'd seen my name.
Yeah.
Saw his and he
name.
said he was very proud of me and this, that, and the other. And we had a bit of sporadic contact on telephone.
He was Australian.
He's Australian, back living in Australia, not a pot to piss in, no money. He was on lots of trouble with the police and stuff, drug problems, alcoholic, and I eventually paid for him to come over and watch me ride my first Ghent 6-day, which was, the thing I'd always dreamt of doing, because he rode Ghent 6-day, and I had a picture of him when I was 1 in the cabins with him. That was the only photo I had of him. And he turned up, and I was racing against men, and I was 19, and I was shining. I was racing against the likes of Adriano Baffi, Silvio Martinello, Etienne de Wilde, Matthew Gilmour, Scott McGrory, all these guys. And jealousy crept in. And within a week, he said, just don't forget, Bradley, you're never going to be as good as your old man was.
I read that.
And that broke my heart, because I only ever wanted to stand on his shoulders. And from that day on, contact became more and more scarce, as from my point of view. And the anger crept in more. Why have you cut me off? And then eventually his, life descended even further, and he got murdered and found in a ditch in 2008 in January. 3 weeks before the World Championships in Manchester, where I won 3 world titles. So I realised cycling had become a great distraction for lots of traumas and events in my life.
Yep.
And when that went, in 2016, when I retired, I had to face normal life. And that's when, the other problems crept in and things like that. So, it's been an interesting journey the last 44 years, but I do feel now, and lots of people do say this, and I've been very guilty of saying this over the years, I'm all right, I'm fine, I'm going to be okay, I'm in a good path now. And it's, when but then go straight back to my old ways. I'm actually, truly out the other side now.
But
not in every way.
Not all right.
But to go back to your initial question, in just being a capable human being to now deal with these problems as an adult.
Right.
And for many years now up to this point, I've not been able to do that. I've not even able to try to get myself out of a house. So,
well, we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
We.
Okay.
We
do.
we do. Yeah, that could be a new t-shirt.
Thank you.
But and we can spend more time talking about. I'm just such it took me so many years to just throw my hand up and really just give up. You just surrender, right? That's the most important word. Surrender.
When was that for you?
Oh,
roughly 5 years ago, 4 years ago. Well, because I would never get that. I never got the sense that you did that, because again,
I talk a lot about, not a lot, but I've talked frequently about this, and to me there are two paths, right? You can have sort of the traditional once a week or once every 2 weeks couch sessions, and it's better than nothing.
What's been the most beneficial for you?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
That's sort of path one, but that's Band-Aid.
Yeah.
Right. Path two is way more intensive, right? So and by the way, it could be a 4 or 5 day program. It could be a 30-day. It could be a 60-day program, right? But this egg that you have created, this trauma egg, not dissimilar to the trauma egg that I had, that my life had created. You have to address every piece of that. You have to look at it. You have to honor and believe it, and ultimately try to peel it back. And so about 5 years ago, I went to a place in Nashville called Onsite, which is a lot of folks have gone. It's super intense, right? And you can do group sessions. You can do one-on-one sessions. I obviously chose the one-on-one session, and I suspect you would too. And I was scared as hell. I was so scared going there. But it was, and I was scared. Everybody's going to be scared. Everybody's going to be nervous, right? People get nervous about certain things. Some people get nervous about small things, like I have to give away my phone for 5 days, and my computer, and my laptop, and all connectivity. People get scared about that. That ends up being a blessing. But so you're nervous anyways. But I also knew that when I went down this path, like everything else in my life, I had to go full gas. I had to attack this. And that just means surrender. It means giving everything to this process, right? And so, but so that was 5 years ago, and I had done the couch stuff for years and years and years. But it wasn't until I dedicated myself to intensive work, and I continued to go, right? And I feel like I'm sort of, the pieces are starting to the sentence is starting to make sense. Yeah. And that sentence is my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I will tell you, I'm going back a week after the tour.
After spending a week with me.
I mean, it's been a traumatic week. I got to put that in my trauma egg. So it's this process that you get, that you almost crave and get comfortable with. Again, we can talk more about that privately and as friends, but I'm looking at this, at the timeline. No human is equipped to manage. No human is equipped to manage one of those. One. Growing up fatherless, and all of this dynamic was way more intense than what I had imagined. Yeah. Nobody can handle that on their own. Yeah. Being molested, nobody can handle that on their own. All of the stuff we read now, right? And all of the stuff that perhaps is out there in the ethos that you are thinking, nobody can handle that on their own. You put them all together, it's impossible, and it only goes. It ends up one place. Yeah, and it was not dissimilar to Jan. Look, Jan. And for you non-cycling fans, Jan Ullrich, the legendary cyclist, he wasn't equipped. And Jan especially wasn't equipped. Jan is very simple. Jan is very sweet. He's not complicated, right? You and I are complicated guys, which, by the way, is fucking amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're not equipped. We are not equipped to manage these things. And so, as your friend, I would encourage you to, we can talk about it, but I would encourage you to, it's so special. And as it starts to line up, and as you start to figure out ways to manage these traumas and to recover from these traumas, man, when you just, it's like people turning on lights. Yeah. It's, and you're 44, right? You've got, you're not even halfway there.
No.
Right? So it's,
I think no one's ever put it like that to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because I've hidden it so well over the years, but I mean, even if I did hide it, you've just done the timeline then with those big events. No one's ever really put it like that to me. So it's, that's a first.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
and I would never have accepted that looking at that timeline. I tell myself to just get on with it. Come on, people have got it far worse than you, and
I tried that.
it's that attitude.
I'm a little older than you, and
because I won the Tour de France and won 5 Olympic golds, there's that whole thing of like, come on, just get your head back on like you did at the Tour.
Yeah,
that kind
it's nobody's that good.
No,
nobody's that great. Nobody's that wise. And if you don't, my view is if you don't intervene surgically, you're wasting time.
Yeah,
you're stuck. And I know you enough to know you don't want to be stuck. I don't want to be stuck. I was sick of being stuck. And so I don't want to dwell on it too much. But I'd love to continue to talk about it in the future at any time, 24/7, 365. But I sound like a therapy salesman at this point, don't I?
No, you don't.
By the way,
no, you just sound like a human being, Lance.
Yeah. And just from a learned life, right? It's impossible.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah. All right. Same time next week then.
What else is there? There's some other fun stuff. We got to talk about cycling because I know there's a bunch of cycling fans listening, and I'm still so curious about this knighthood stuff. This is just I think it's the coolest thing. I'll talk about the knighthood thing for a sec because you met not all, but you met 3 of my 5 kids while you were here, and I would say to my kids before you came, I said, listen, this guy's going to come. He's going to stay with us for a week. He's a cycling legend. He won the Tour. He won, blah, 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 8 medals. And I would always end up and say, and I couldn't help it. And he got knighted.
Yeah.
He's Sir Bradley Wiggins. Like, I don't know. It just seems amazing to me.
Everyone here in Aspen it's a fascination with Americans about the British and the knighthoodship. Whereas I've said to people, it's a weapon for the media to attack you with back home.
Right.
Once you get given it, and there's a lot of jealousy attached to it. But obviously, a lot of people have abused the knighthood system, and they've given them to the wrong people that have come down for really serious stuff. Whether it's paedophilia and fraudulent activity and things like that. So it's been made a mockery of a bit over the years. But at the same time, from the sportsman's point of view and the sportswomen that have been awarded the damehood, which is the equivalent, it's been amplified in the last 20 years because of the success we've had in British sport, Olympics, and particularly cyclists. There are 3 male cyclists, myself, Mark Cavendish now, and Chris Hoy. So Chris Hoy was
the first
track cyclist. Yeah. And then there's a couple, I can't remember who they are on the female side, but there's certainly Dame Laura Kenny and a few others. So it's so
did they just call you up? Like, are you
so
we thought about it. We're going to make. You've been knighted officially.
There's a pathway to that. It starts with an MBE, which is a member of the British Empire. So you get awarded an MBE for services too. Then it goes to OBE, Order of the British Empire.
Tickles. These are just tickles.
Then there's a CBE, which is a Commander of the British Empire. I've had all of them because after every Olympic gold I got awarded a medal. And then I got another one. We give them an OBE now. So I went up the ranking, and after my success in London 2012, and then I got awarded the knighthood. Yeah. It's funny. I almost forget I have it now, and I take the mick out.
I'm not going to let you.
No, I take the mick out of it. Things like that. But you noticed one thing when I sent you that text message from the airport, and it's on my boarding pass. I didn't even know it was on my boarding pass.
Yeah, it's on your boarding pass.
And it's on my cards. It's on everything. And
like your credit card says Sir Bradley Wiggins.
But it used to be on the race results because I was awarded it when I was still racing. So when I did the Giro in 2013, I was Sir Bradley Wiggins in the race, in the results in the evening.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and right up till I've retired in 2016. So, it'd be on the scoreboard in the track centre. Rio Olympic gold, Sir Bradley Wiggins, Owen Dahl, Ed Clancy.
Wow.
And I kind of after a while that you become institutionalised. That you forget that's. I guess that is quite an amazing thing. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's. Yeah. I mean, for whatever reason, it maybe it does. Americans have this weird obsession with the royal family. I think Princess Di probably had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
In recent years, but they make amazing shows about it, and when the Queen died,
it was huge.
Like people here,
freaked
out. which look, it sucks when anybody dies, but there is this obsession. So I just found myself saying to him, now listen, but here's the thing. He's a knight. Like he's Sir Bradley Wiggins. I don't know. There's something super cool about that.
There is one other Sir in Aspen though. I've heard this week.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Your ex next door neighbor Pam told me that there is a British Sir Knight of the Realm in Aspen. He got services to the financial industry or something. She'll probably tell you his name. But yeah, so apparently there's two of us here at the moment.
Martin Franklin?
Maybe.
Well, he was knighted in Antigua.
Right. But that's part of the British colony.
So he is Sir Martin Franklin.
Yeah, there you go. That's probably him.
But I didn't know if that was
the British Empire, because it goes back to the British Empire days.
So if he rolls up to London, he's Sir Martin Franklin.
Yeah.
He's a great friend of mine. We call him Sir.
Anyone in the British Empire could get it because that's what it goes back to. So, the old Commonwealth, the old British Empire, all the countries. And it's actually all the countries we invaded, basically, and took from the locals. That's where it goes back to.
He's going to kill me because he's a great. I just thought he was knighted on a small Caribbean island.
No.
So that counts.
That counts.
I'm an idiot.
Yeah. Well, now you know a bit more about it, so you can apologize to him.
He's a pretty tough guy. But you're right, Sir Martin Franklin.
Yeah.
And his father was knighted too.
Yeah.
What about of course your road career, because there are really two careers, right? There's the track career, which I don't know anything about. I mean, I know what the pursuit is. Yeah. I don't know. I don't follow track cycling. I don't follow 6 days. But obviously the road stuff, people, what?
You came to the World Track Championships one year when I was 21.
I did.
In Antwerp.
Yep.
With Pat McQuaid or Merckx, was it?
Merckx was with us.
I was there warming up and you walked past me in the track centre at the end of 2001.
Wow.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember that. I don't remember a lot.
It was like October time. Yeah.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah.
But the days of Sky, I remember when Sky came to be and the Brits are going to come and build this super team and we're going to win the Tour de France. I said, these guys have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
There is no way.
I think a lot of people said that.
Yeah. I said, there's absolutely no way they're going to win the Tour de France. But look, it happened and it happened many times.
Yeah.
And all of the stars that came through that program, yourself, Geraint Thomas, Chris Froome, Richie Porte.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on and on and on. There was this, and I never quite understood, and I never really believed what I read, the dynamic at the time with Chris Froome, and who, by the way, is not knighted, which I asked you the other day. I'm not sure I understand that, but whatever. There had to be days and seasons where it was a mess.
Yeah, it was a mess.
Managing you and Chris Froome.
It was a complete mess, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we did one season with that, right? It
was a complete mess.
With Contador and it was,
and
it sucked for everybody.
Yeah, and over the years, I've probably took a lot of the responsibility for that on my own shoulders. But I don't think it's a lot to do with either myself or Chris Froome. Really, I think we got played off by the management, the powers that be. That's just an observation. I'm not saying that it's a criticism. I just think. In recent years, the Sky and the Ineos thing, that we became accustomed and used to the two-pronged attack that Dave used to call it, or the three-pronged attack, where you'd start the race with three leaders and you'd all work it out. That was the first year that we sort of, even though I was the leader, we sort of had Chris as a backup, as a two-pronged attack line, first and second on GC. It just got out of hand. But it is what it is. I mean, I don't know, but me and Chris have made up now. I apologised to him many years for my part in it, and I spoke to him a month or two ago. Yeah, he's a great guy. Chris, he's the greatest tour rider of our
generation.
Seems like
a really sweet guy.
We used to room together before all the shit happened. The 2011 World Tour, we were rooming together, and he's a lovely guy. And he's had, equally as traumatic upbringing as well, in a different culture. He lost his mother when he was younger, and he's been a great rider. But like many things, I think he experienced the same thing. How cutthroat Sky was, and what happened to me at my end of my time at Team Sky, pretty much pushed out, happened to him as well. Right. As they made way for Geraint Thomas, and it's interesting. But that, again, it's that Chris. I was probably too naive in thinking that I'm part of the family and they're always going to look after us. Right. But elite sport is brutal. And it is cutthroat. And once your career's done there, maybe I shouldn't have expected any sort of presents or gifts from them all.
I think that's different on European teams I mean, to us, to American teams and American cycling fans, we don't know anything about this, by and large.
No.
Right? As a country and as a society, we're so focused on other sports. Like, I mean, honestly, American sports fans are like, "Oh, cool. Yeah. There's 3 Americans in the Tour de France.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great." Yeah. Like, it's not. There's no pressure. There's no expectation. This is not like it would be on a European team, which was probably fortunate for us.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your children.
Yeah.
I've met Ben.
Yeah.
This amazing kid.
Yeah.
Obviously an incredible cyclist.
Yeah.
He came to Mallorca with you, and I loved this dynamic between the two of y'all. And most people know, like, my children don't ride bikes, race bikes, train on bikes.
No.
They're certainly not the European champion in any event or the American champion. And our compadre George, has a son in a similar situation. But to see the love and the dynamic between you two, but we were watching the race this morning, sitting right here watching the mountain stage.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here. I said, "What is that noise?" The race was on right here on the TV, and I'm like, "What's?" And I look over, and you had somehow streaming live his race, the Madison at the European Championships, on the phone. It must be so special to see. Like,
I mean,
he's a neat kid.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's my best friend.
That's amazing.
But I mean,
your protector.
Yeah, he is. He's been more of a father figure to me than I have been to him in some periods. And he knows that. I've told him. There are times your kids probably look after you a bit, as well. I mean, it goes. I'm not talking about sort of sitting in old age pensioners' home when you're older, but it's just
feeding you soup.
I've always been super open with my children, about all my problems. When I think that's rebounded and paid dividends in the support and them checking on me and just making sure I'm all right. They look out for me. But Ben, the cycling, is from the day he was born. He came to the Tour de France first year, I think in 2005. 2006, whatever tour it was, walking round the buses, and it's like the same old thing, he's just been around bikes his whole life, and the first 11 years of his life, his dad was a professional cyclist, so he remembers everything. He's been on the podiums, he's been on the Tour de France, he rode up the Champs-Elysees with me when he was 7, when I won, on a little yellow bike,
It's a good start.
Yeah, so it's, and it's, he's never wanted to do anything else other than be a professional cyclist. It's what he's always wanted to do. And I've only ever supported him as a father way. I think from their own dynamic with my own
pressure.
It's not something I never wanted to coach him. Right. I never wanted to be the one pushing him, telling him when he got him back home from school, get on the turbo trainer now for 2 hours. Right. Why didn't you do this session? I don't want to be the one standing there criticising him if he doesn't win a race. Today, they finished second in the Madison today, and they were leading till the last sprint. I just messaged him this afternoon and said, "Good result, that, mate. Well done. It's another step forward." Yep. I'm not going to be the one going, "What happened?" or whatever. It's
well, you were or you were watching the race.
Yeah,
but said,
"Well,
I saw what you did there.
I'm a supporter of his, and I'm his mentor. And
you're a cheerleader.
He can do no wrong for me, because the most important thing for me is who he is as a person. And it's something that I grew up not having. I had a mother who pushed me into being a professional cyclist, to somehow pay back my father, because he never wanted me to be a professional cyclist, for leaving us. And I'm going to make our son a better cyclist than you ever were. And so I was the dynamic in their relationship. And in doing that, my mum was very emotionally guarded. She never really told me she loved me, never told me she was proud of me. Her apartment at home, a flat at home is like a shrine to me, my cycling career. And I had self-worth issues as just as a human being. Who was Bradley, the person? Or what have I got to offer this world? And that really affected me when I retired, because all I'd ever had was this confidence that you're Sir Bradley Wiggins, you're a legend and you're a hero to most. And I get told that every day. But take that away, and who am I the person? What have I got to offer anyone, And I've had to learn that over the last few years. What's my worth as a person, And that's something I want to instill in my children. Is just their worth. He's enough for me as a person.
Well, isn't that amazing?
He's not defined by anything that he's got in life.
And I do think, and I've already said this. You and I are very similar. Have lived similar paths when it comes to not growing up with a father,
Yeah.
and certainly not maybe even more importantly, a strong father figure, a strong man.
Yeah.
Because men are men, right? And not having that North Star. And so, one could think, well, gosh, these two guys, Lance and Bradley, their kids are screwed.
Yeah.
Right? But
I did have one in my stepfather.
Yeah.
But his way of leading was with a puffed chest and, a iron hand.
Yeah.
Like a clip around the ear.
Right.
And I've never raised a hand to my children, and I never will.
Right.
Because to me, the alpha male is the one who's got the dominance of the room, but without having to raise their hands.
Right.
And that was what it was like. It was like a military-esque type, because he was in the military, this gentleman, my stepfather, and it just went too far at times.
They're not married. Stepfather?
No.
Your mom's still alive?
Yeah.
Lives in London?
London, yeah. And then it was just that, really. I'd get a clip round the ear for knocking a glass of milk over,
Right.
and stuff like that.
Similar. But you learn, like, at least from my perspective, you're like, I didn't grow up with these things and nobody taught me, but I knew I grew up learning what not to do and how not to be a father. So I've just sort of overcompensated as a father with my kids. Now, we don't get to judge ourselves on whether or not we're good fathers.
No, we don't.
Right?
No, we don't.
I could pull a few of my kids in right now and we could ask them. Yeah. I suspect I get good marks, but you sort of learn by what you missed.
Yeah.
And your daughter?
She's great. Yeah, she's 17, Bella.
She did sort out your visa thing on the way over.
She did. She drove my passport to me. I was doing a talk in Leeds and she drove my passport to me. She's fantastic. Another great friend of mine and looks out for me. She messaged me the other day when I was just got here and said,
Did you make it?
Not do anything silly. You shouldn't be, Dad.
And, we'll have her call me. I will.
She stopped me. She got me to stop smoking when I stopped smoking 2 years ago. She stopped me smoking and just things like that. It's and again, like you just said there, I could haul them two in here and they will give you full and frank. It's not about whether I've been a fantastic dad over the years. They'll say, he's a bit of a cunt at times. Yeah. But on the whole, he's fucking good. But we can all be a
and you can say that word in most people will listen to this in America, the C word. But I know it's different over there.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah. There's a term of endearment in some cases,
Some would say.
Yeah, no, it is. There's different types of.
But
there's good ones, there's bad ones, there's dirty
grandma
ones.
Who's listening in Lincoln, Nebraska, she said, Jesus, this guy just said cunt.
Oh, sorry. Is it that offensive?
It's pretty offensive.
It's a word. It's a 4-letter word. There's far worse.
I'm giving you grief because I do believe that it's a term of endearment.
Okay. But wow.
I just didn't expect to hear it this hour.
No, okay. Well.
Another thing I tracked over the years, and I just Johan sent it to me actually, and I was like, "What is he up to?" And I just kept watching. I'm like, "Man, he's serious about this." Was this collection?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm talking about bike history, memorabilia, collectibles, historical items, and you had there was, at least I thought I was tracking it on Instagram, and I mean, it was one thing after another. I'm like, this is insane. Like, there's no collection like this
there isn't
in the world.
And I've stopped years ago actually doing that. But
I went through
when I retired, I went through this OCD type sort of obsession with it, where I just went and collected more and more. And I realised now I was going through this sort of, I was revisiting my childhood in many ways. Because I answered all these questions when I retired. Why? Because I ended up hating cycling when I retired. Why did I do it? I wish I'd never done this now. What happened there the last 15 years of my life? I started by wanting to win Olympic gold because I watched Chris Boardman win Olympic gold in 1992 in Barcelona, and that was my dream. I won the event that I watched Chris Boardman do in Athens in 2004. And then it went from one thing to another. Then I wanted to do a Tour de France. I rode the Tour de France. Then I wanted, I never imagined of winning the Tour de France. Then I found myself going toe with you for the podium in 2009. Then Sky come along, want to win the Tour in 5 years, and it was like this. It just all happened. It was like whirlwind. And then I retired. 5 Olympic golds, Tour de France, national celebrity, knighthood. And I was like, and I was craved normality, And I was like, what the fuck just happened there for the last 10, 15 years? And I hate cycling. I didn't want to ride my bike. And I remember I'd been collecting jerseys for years. And I started digging all these things out. And I started re-evoking memories of childhood. Like the thing that gave me the most distraction in childhood with all that trauma is watching cycling on the telly, and then the escape. So I grew up in a very rough area, in a rough housing estate, where a lot of knife stabbings and murders and things. Yeah. It wasn't a safe place, and so the bike facilitated escaping the environment I was growing up in. And it was buying magazines, pictures on my walls of places in Italy and Belgium, and those interviews in January in a cycle sport magazine or pro cycling magazine where they go and visit a rider at their place in Italy, and it's like looking at the season ahead, and they'd be out training in the hills, and I think, I'm central London, it's like this is the life. So it was an obsession that I latched onto to give me comfort in the childhood, to escape the environment, along with the fact that I had a dad who did it as well. Sometimes I got pictures of him as well in his jerseys, and I've said it before, I've said it openly, I wrote a chapter about you in one of the books I did about these jerseys. In the 1993, I was 13, and I watched the World Championships in Oslo, in Norway, and didn't know who you was. I remember you'd won a stage at the Tour de France that year. That was the first stage I'd watched. And that winter, I watched the Triple Crown video when you won in Seattle, in Philadelphia and all that. And then in the subsequent years, watched the Tour de France, and I sort of fell in love with the Motorola cycling team. Sean Yates was my hero. I met him when I was 15. He gave me a trophy. And Phil Anderson, my mum said he used to race your dad. They were great mates. They were at the Commonwealth Games in 1978 together.
So Motorola was
Phil Anderson and Rob, and then all the Henny Kuiper raced with my dad and all that. So I fell in love with this team. I had all the stuff. Plus, there was a British one year called Paul Brown at the team.
Sure, yeah.
Do you remember Paul?
For sure, he was on Motorola with us.
And he used to give me all the kit, the leisure casual kit and stuff. He used to come to the junior races with us and massage our legs. So it was great. And you had Brian Smith there at one point.
Yep.
But yeah, so
it was bikes. You had I mean, where is all this stuff?
It's all in the lockup.
It is.
Yeah. It's all in the lockup.
But just for the people listening, like, what would be? Let's talk about bikes, right? Because to me, it's easy to source jerseys. Not easy, but it's easy.
I don't have many bikes, by the way.
You do, but there's some.
There was some. I don't really have.
Was there an Indurain?
I do an Indurain time trial bike. Still got that
time trial bike.
Yeah, from the 1992 Luxembourg time trial.
I mean, that's pretty collectible.
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah.
And will only become more collectible. Yeah. How do you find a 1992 Miguel Indurain bike?
I found that from a guy in Spain who got that, because Indurain has all these bikes. But a lot of the time, particularly with the jerseys, because I won the Tour de France, winning the hour record and all this, and because I was vocal about being such a fan and historian of the sport,
people would come to you.
I got access to my heroes, if you like, from childhood. So Eddie Merckx would gift me to come to town, come to breakfast, Have you got any jerseys upstairs? And you go and digging up the loft. There's a couple you can have. Now, most people wouldn't be able to. There's a famous collector in San Francisco called Brett Horton. I bought a lot of him, but he'd struggled to get access and pay extortionate amounts of money when riders were perhaps down on their luck and needed the money. But I got gifted this stuff because your peers were more in awe and humbled by the fact that someone they respected that have done, even acknowledged them, that you were an inspiration for me at one time. Because most cyclists don't really these days, do they? Right. Let's face it. But I did it in an obsessive way and over adulation stuff. So Mauricio Fondres gave me some stuff. Tommy Simpson's family gave me one of his World Championship jerseys. I went and sort of got Fausto Coppi's Jello jersey from the 1952 Tour de France. And Nencini. So a lot of the old Italian riders, their families, just the fact you mentioned their dad in the press, they kind of... And then I was, in awe of... Not in awe, but it's been a great honour. The generation I came through that I raced with, we were all juniors together. I got... I came out of a really good generation, the 1998 Junior Worlds generation, Tom Boonen, Filippo Pozzato, Cancellara. We all came out the same generation, and it's been, I've got jerseys from them and stuff. So I've got to the point now I realise, I went overboard at times with the obsessiveness of it.
I was tracking it. I was like, wow, where does this end?
But that was part of my process of trying to discover, cycling was all I knew, and this who am I, Brad? I thought that, so I became a curator of this thing because I thought that was my destiny in life, was to win the Tour de France and be this creative cycling. But I've come away from that last few years, and
Well,
as
but
you know, I don't really watch cycling now. And
Yeah, but it's still in line.
Yeah.
I mean, I think perhaps on the show, it sounds like we're kind of just throwing this around for kicks. This encyclopedia, this historian. I mean, it's real, right? And this is in line with that, right? And I'll just
But I've never used it to my benefit.
but it's
No,
there.
I've never used it to my benefit.
No,
And
but
I
it's
think
there.
there's a better way of me accessing it and using it. I started to get to that point on the back of the motorbike when I was covering the Tour de France for Eurosport.
That's what I saw.
But I never had enough. I never had a big enough play. There's so much I wanted to say, and it's
I would lean into that. I mean, I and we do joke about it, but it's true. Sadly, I don't remember any of these things, and I think some people could look at that and say, well, that's kind of cool. That's healthy. Yeah. I mean, is it? Maybe sometimes, but it hit me. Actually hit me hard. I was my son's living in Paris for a year, and we went to go see him for a week. And I took my bike, and Paris is obviously an incredible city, but it's an incredible cycling city, and they've got it set up. I mean, the bike lanes, and you can get out of Paris and you can ride. And so I spent the whole week riding from this Airbnb that we had, and right in the middle of Paris. And I could get out into the countryside and I could ride. Some days I rode, most days I rode alone. Some days I rode with other people. And, but when I'm leaving town, I mean, you're riding past, you're stepping where Napoleon stepped, and, all these crazy historical events, some good, some terrible, but a place steeped in history, right? In the history of that city. And I was sort of 4 or 5 days in, and I thought, you know what? I think I fucked up. Because when I was here from 1999 to 2005, I thought this was my city, and I thought this was my race. I believed that. Yeah. I said, "What? Don't tell me what to do. This is my race." And it took me being 52 years old and just being a person, right? A 52-year-old old guy out riding his bike. And finally one day it hit me. I said, no, this is their race. Yeah. And this is their city. And this is their country. They let you come be a part of this. Yeah. And I mean, that's 25 years, right? But I'm telling you, when I was there, I said, this is mine. Yeah. And it wasn't. So that's a kid who has no respect for the history and no connection to the history, and certainly of the bike race and certainly of the country. I was borrowing their country, and they let me ride around, and it hit me, man. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And you have moments like that, and you're like, I love looking for opportunities to reflect on my life and remind myself that I deserve certain things. Mm-hmm. To believe that it's your race when it's not, you deserve it. Yeah. And it sounds grim and deep or whatever, but it was special. I was like, it wasn't mine. It was theirs. Mm-hmm. I haven't shared that story, but
it's interesting.
Yeah. So it's important. I love it. I love when you talk history. I'm like, I mean, you nailed the answer today. I guess somebody texted me confirming that you. Yeah. I mean, I could see you there racking your brain, like it was like you were going to figure this out. I was like, what is he doing? Yeah. I was like, I don't know. Yeah. But you got. I mean, that's special.
Well, I just worked back through the generations. So in my mind,
but you would have worked back to the 30s knowing you.
Yeah, but there's not many winners in that time, right? Really, there's not an individual winner for 60 years. So you've got your era, you've got the 7. Before you've got the Indurain, the 5, one with Reese in between, Ulrich in there as well. You got it. Yeah. And then before that, you've got the Le Monde, Delgado, Roche, they were 1s and 2s and 3s. Yeah. Then you've got the Fignon and Bernardinos and 2s. So there's like 20 riders in a 30-year period. So it's very easy to. I'm like the green, was it Rain Man? My numbers all doing this for all these numbers before
like Rain Man. I mean, maybe that's
no, just from kind of.
And then one year they let Carlos Sastre win. Imagine that.
They did. Yeah. But he won the Tour de France.
He did.
He won the Tour de France.
I agree. This has been so special. But it's not been it's been very special. It's been a perfect ending to our week
No,
together.
it's been. You've been.
I wasn't worried about you in this outlaw town.
No,
I wasn't.
No.
I was worried about you getting here, but I knew when you got here that knowing you as I do, knowing this community as I do, I said this guy may never leave. We have confirmed that. I mean, he has to leave because he's.
I'll be back.
Got other thing. He'll be back.
Yeah.
Can we have you back?
You can have me back. I would.
Because I can. I'm
Lance,
telling
I would
you,
love
man.
to come back and do this every year. You know.
Oh, well, you know what?
For 3 weeks.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Put me on the payroll. I'll be here.
Well, that's why I asked the question about who gets the payroll.
Yeah.
But it's been special, and just hopefully our I'm sure there's going to be a mass revolt come Tuesday.
Yeah.
When Sir Wiggo's gone, and
Yeah. No,
you're like, yeah.
You.
You were not supposed to confirm that.
You've
You're
been
supposed
good
to
to
know
me,
you guys will
Lance.
be fine.
No, honestly, and thank you, Lance, because you've been good to me over the years. The first time we properly met, I mean, we'd seen each other sporadically in races, when you were prime, when you probably didn't really know who I was, but you'd see me with Garmin or whoever.
Yeah.
Because there was a couple of times you said hello to me in the peloton in your pomp years. But 2009, we rocked up at the Giro. I saw you at Milan San Remo. We got semi-chatting at the Giro and days. But the Tour de France then, and I found myself in a position where I was, around you a lot racing, while we were going for those podium places. You had all the stuff going on with Contador and that team dynamic. And,
Miserable.
you were good to me in that tour and you encouraged me. There was one day I particularly remember coming into Le Grand Bornand where you flicked me, I remember we was me, you and Nibali and we ended up on that climb together. And then we got onto the final climb that dropped to Le Grand Bornand. And you were encouraging me, go on, Wiggo, you've got this. And you attacked me towards the summit, if you remember.
I don't.
But it was like, that was a dream come true for me to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine. And whatever position I finished in the top 10 in that tour, that would have done me.
Yeah.
Because I never imagined I'd find myself in the top 10 in the Tour de France or even racing with yourself.
So that was the springboard.
And I ended up fourth and got the Mont Ventoux.
Yep.
45 years after Tommy Simpson was in a similar position to me that died and lost his life on that climb. Was amazing. And to secure fourth place on the summit. And then, we sort of saw each other because Bradley in 2010 when you came back a bit. And then obviously you left the sport. But you've been good to me over the years. We've kept in semi-contact on Instagram and that. And you've I think you've done more for me than you realise actually the last 2 years. You have. So, and my son will vouch for that. He's.
Yeah. Well, I have to keep an open line of communication with Ben because your number changes so often.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even save the number anymore.
No,
you know that. It's in there, and I'll find it plus 44 or something. But so I got to get the number from Ben.
Yeah, I know. He tells me. Yeah. He tells me.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much. Thanks for this week. Thanks for doing this. It was special. We have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you.
When the whole world's not listening.
Right.
Sir Wiggo.
Signing in.
That still sounds so cool. Sir Bradley Wiggins.
You're still the GOAT. What? You're still the GOAT.